Please bow your heads. O Lord, let us offer thanks for our food, blessings for one another, and for absent friends. Let us be a source of hope for those in need and contentment for those who are lonely. Let us give gratitude for our opportunity to serve Rotary. Let the feelings of love, kindness, and well-directed yet gentle spirit always be reflected in our actions. Amen.
Amen. You may be seated. Thank you, Andrew. Andy Shane is pulling his third and final shift here for the month of December to introduce our visiting Rotarians.
Well, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to all. We have actually a bounty of guests, visiting Rotarians today, excuse me. First of all, Butch Wallace from West Metro. There you go. Emerson Smith from 5 Points. Nancy Moody from 5 Points. Tommy Gregory, completing our trifecta from 5 Points. Bud Coward from Aiken. And Congressman Joe Wilson from Casey. Yes. Okay, gotcha. And of course, if you have visitors today, please stand up and go ahead and we'll pass on the mic.
Hi, I'm John Durst. Merry Christmas. Delighted to have some very special guests with us today. We have the wife of our speaker, Ann Sumwalt. Also, we have his sister, Elizabeth Clark, and her husband, Emery Clark.
Hi, I'm Joe Jones, a proud 25-year member of this club. And I'm pleased today to have as my guest Betsy McKay, who is the aunt of our speaker today. And welcome McKay, who is the first cousin and a young man who's becoming very interested in aviation.
Play, but I am delighted to have pianist extraordinaire and my dear friend Dot Lackey with us today.
I'm Carrie Powers, and I have with me, will you stand up? I have Shrek with me today. This is Jeremy Shekel. He's with Catapult Kitchen and Bath, and he has the best, almost the best. He's rivaling William in his attire today, so thank you. He also rang the bell for me this year, so I really wanted to bring him. He's not a Rotarian, but he did ring the bell for me. Also, I have Alex Salmon. He's an insurance agent with Allstate in Ballantyne, and he was also one of my bell ringers, so welcome.
Good afternoon, I'm Kim Mitchell, and I have with me today Hannah Davis, and she is with Castle Brothers Heating and Cooling also.
I'm Stephen Creek. I have a guest today. Jeff, if you would stand up. This is my friend Jeff Manning. Jeff is the Strategic Initiatives Director at Adams & Reese Law Firm. He also is the proud nephew of Rotary International Vice President Ann Matthews. So welcome, Jeff.
I'm Jim Hamilton. I'm really not a visitor. I just don't get here very often anymore. Shame on me. I have, I think, 8 guests today. 3 of them fell out on us from the bug that's going around this morning. But start with James Stevens, who took his first airplane ride with my son John, who is pastor to take him on his first ride, New Life Baptist Church in St. Andrews. Since we have so many, if you just hold your applause so we get them all, and we don't have enough time to talk about what they do, because they're all very, very involved in aviation. Bud Coward, you met, this past president, and Chris Epperson, and Ishmael Ostek. Now, how did I do with that? and Ebony Tyler, Chris Eversman, David Anderson, and Randy DeBerry. And there are Maynard Cutsworth here, who's an Aviation Hall of Fame fellow, as is Buck Schuler, as is Robert Sumwalt. So I think did I miss anybody? Okay, thank you so much.
It's great to have so many visitors and guests with us today. We hope you'll come back in the new year. And, excuse me, Rusty has two more.
I'm Rusty Pass, and I have two guests today, George Crouch, who's a communications consultant, and the most long-suffering woman you will see between now and the first of the year, and that is my wife, Susan.
Thank you, Rusty. Welcome again to all of our visiting Rotarians and guests. Rusty, I'm going to ask you to come back up here. We're going to have a little bit of fun today with some music. It's the holidays. For those of you who were here last year, the last meeting before Christmas, you're familiar with what we did. 12 Days of Christmas. So we've got a pianist extraordinaire here. We've got Rusty to tell you a little bit about how this is going to work, and we're going to have some fun.
We're going to be 11 players.
You all, hopefully the members of the club will remember this from past years. We used to have the what I dubbed the Dunbar table right down here. It was a bunch of old curmudgeons, and they used to sing, led by Sam Cartledge, 5 golden rings. Anyway, the curmudgeons have moved now, and it's the Shives table, and it's going to be over there at the end of the room. Now, does everybody have a little tent like this, a little paper tent on their table? If so, or hopefully, you will. That is what you will sing. We all know the song, you know, on the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, da-da-da. All right, and then we have, who's a partridge in a pear tree? Is that you all? Great table for that, great table for that. All right, they will end, of course, each verse, and what we would like to do, now realize this is asking a lot of some of our guests down here, but what we would like for you to do is, when you sing, stand up. So that we've got people jumping up and down the whole time. Now, Tommy Gregory, you're excused from that, okay? And Maynard Cutsworth, I've already told, is excused from that at age 98. So, but anyway, everybody who can, please try to play the game, and everybody should have a little tent. Anybody not have a tent on their table? You guys back there do 9 lords of leaping. Isn't it 9 lords of leaping? Isn't that right? 10 lords of leaping. You do 10 lords of leaping. Okay. All right. Y'all ready? Okay.
She's going to help us.
teasing us and doing that. I'd like to invite President-elect Louisa Campbell up. Last week we elected our board for 2019-2020, and we also nominated a new president-elect and a new secretary.
Thank you, President Stephen. We did indeed. And our president-elect next year is Mason Hardy. And I know Mason And for the first time ever, we elected a secretary. And this next year, our secretary is going to be Catherine Davis. Leaders. So it's going to be a great year, just like this year, right?
That's right. Thank you, Louisa. And thank you, Catherine, Mason, for your service and your willingness to serve this club and leadership. That's a big commitment. I'd like to invite Karen Blackman up. She's going to offer our health and happiness today. You don't see her, but I know she's here. There she is.
Everyone on this most wonderful time of the year. Wanted to do a little history and tradition about Christmas around the world today, since we are a worldwide organization. And I'm not sure, a lot of folks probably know this, but Christmas was actually started by Constantine around 336 AD. So Christmas doesn't go back quite as far as everybody thought it did. And it wasn't accepted widely by early Christians until the 9th century, when it became a major holiday. One of the primary reasons we give presents to each other at Christmas is to remind us of the presents given to Jesus by the wise men, frankincense, gold, and myrrh. Frankincense was a perfume used in Jewish worship, and as a gift it showed that people would worship Jesus. Gold was associated with kings, and Christians believed that Jesus is the King of Kings. Myrrh was a perfume that was put on the dead bodies to mask the smell of death, and as a gift it showed Jesus would suffer and die. But as we know, that Christmas is about the greatest gift that God gave us, which is Jesus. So on a lighter note, over the world, people give presents to each other, as we know, and we do here. Children believe in a Christmas gift bringer, such as St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, Father Christmas, Christkind, and in Spain they believe it's the wise men and that bring them gifts. And in parts of Italy they believe the giver is an old woman named Befana. Sorry if I mutilated that Italian pronunciation. And also most countries have some sort of charitable giving in their Christmas traditions. We have some rather unusual and unique traditions around the world. In Ukraine, it's traditional to hang spider webs shaped decorations on the tree, which reflect the legend of the poor widow who didn't have enough money to decorate her tree, but when her children awoke at Christmas Day, the tree was covered in webs that glistened in gold and silver in the morning light. I just thought that was kind of cool. Spain has a dish made of honey, egg white, sugar, and toasted almonds. It dates back to the 16th century. In Great Britain, mistletoe was first hung as a decorative thing there, but the kissing traditions probably originated in Scandinavia. Go figure that one. Holland, children receive their presents from Sinterklaas on December the 5th, and they think if they leave carrots for Sinterklaas's horse, he will leave sweets for them. And in a little twist, the favorite thing for Japanese and a little taste of the South, their traditional Christmas meal was fried chicken. So yeah, winter chicken dinner. Ireland, it's traditional for the Irish families to leave out mince pies and a pint of Guinness as a snack for Santa, so I'm sure he's happier on the remainder of the flight. In Finland, families decorate the tree with geometric mobiles made of straw, and it's also customary to enjoy a sauna on Christmas Eve. According to ancient custom, this ritual cleanses the body and the mind. The Philippines have a giant lantern festival, and it's held the Saturday before Christmas Eve. They have grown it to the point that they have electric lights and brightly colored lanterns that are huge. And in Norway, people have their brooms on Christmas Eve. It dates back to an ancient, very ancient medieval belief in evil spirits and witches, and they thought that evil spirits and witches would come steal their brooms on Christmas Eve to ride, so they would hide them, so they couldn't do that, and they continue to do that even today. And I understand from Andy there's a tradition about hiding your broom on New Year's Eve so you don't sweep away the good luck for the coming year. So I thought that was kind of cool. Thanks for that little tidbit there, Andy. So I would also just wanted to remind us as we go through our holiday season this year that we remember to celebrate it in the tradition that it is, and also in the tradition of Rotary and the tradition of giving service over self. So Merry Christmas to everyone.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate you giving us that to reflect on over the holidays. Christmas is a good time of year to look back at your year. The Rotary year begins July 1st, so it's the middle of my year as president, and it gives me some time to reflect on what I want to accomplish next year as the president of the club. On April 27th, we are going to have our fundraiser, and that's going to be the Bocce Bash. And here to tell you a little bit more about it and some of the opportunities available for our club members to take advantage of is Blake Buchanan from the Fireflies.
Thanks, President Stephen. As he already mentioned, we are in the planning of this event right now, April 27th, as Stephen said, and it will be at Spirit Communications Park, an all-day event in conjunction with the Special Olympics of South Carolina, who we're doing this with. And I mentioned a couple of weeks, or it's been a couple of months, and I mentioned that Glenn Matthews had, with Modern Exterminating, had been our first sponsor. And I'm here to tell you right now, we've raised $10,000 in sponsorships already. And the big one came from Cynthia, who brought one of her clients on for $5,000 last week. So we're, and the sponsor is K Plumbing, so thanks Cynthia for that. And this is really without, I mean, we've had a couple of meetings, but this has been sort of our small committee or a group of us going out and kind of talking on our own. And the website, which you see rotating on every week, has all the information on it. Sponsorships are $1,000 for a quart, $2,500 for a lunch. The hospitality tent sponsor of $5,000 was K Plumbing, and then a title sponsor. So we're going to have our next meeting at the following the next club meeting on January 7th, as well as the committee will talk about it. Anybody that wants to come join that, you can meet with us right afterwards. And if you have any questions, just find one of us that day, and we'll look forward to getting everything really going in January to get all these sponsors on the books. All right, thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Blake. I appreciate your leadership in this endeavor. It's really, it's different. We've always done the golf tournament, but this is something that everybody can play in, whether you play golf or not, as long as you have arms to throw the bocce ball, you can participate. So it's going to be a good time. A couple of announcements from me. The baskets on your tables, that's for the Seawell staff, so please remember them over the holidays. This is our one time a year we really take time to thank them for what they do for us, taking care of us, so please take care of them. The board met a couple of weeks ago and had one resignation to report. Regina Brown resigned from the club. She's been very busy with her work. She is a past president of another Rotary club and was a great member of this club for a long time. One of my goals this year was communication and transparency to everybody, so we brought 3 new members in last week. We lost one this month, which is unfortunate, but wanted to make you aware in case you see Regina in the community. If you are a new member of our club, meaning you've been inducted since August 1st, which July 31st was our last fireside chat, so if you've been inducted since the 1st of August, we are going to be having a fireside chat on January the 28th at 5:30. It will be either in my house or the Kings Grant Clubhouse, depending on the size of the crowd. I'll let you know that, but did want to make sure you put that on your calendar if you're a new member. Anyway, now the fun part. Jerry Pate is here to introduce our speaker.
me say right off the bat, Jim Covington is responsible for our speaker being here today. And Jim asked me to come up and introduce him, which is a real pleasure. Who knows what happened on this date 115 years ago? Some of you older guys. Jim, were you there? Orville Wright made his first flight, 100 feet. And I think it was 10 feet off the ground or something like that. Anyway, it's a pleasure. I told him originally, you ever run into people that or do you ever think of people that you really want to meet? And I told him earlier when I met him, I said, he's someone that I've wanted to meet for a long, long time. First of all, let me congratulate our speaker and his wife, because this week they're going to be celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. All right, let me see if I can. He's got a long history of doing great things, and I'm going to try to abbreviate that because I think intros for speakers ought to be short and concise. I'll do the best I can with his lengthy record. He's a Columbia native, a graduate of Dreher High School in the University of South Carolina. He holds a master's degree in aeronautical science from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. He was the first chairman of the Richland County Airport Commission and served on the committee that actually reoriented the runway at Hamilton Owens Airport to make the airport much safer. He spent 24 years as a commercial pilot for Piedmont and U.S. Airways, attaining the rank of captain. He was a consultant to NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System. He wrote and published over 100 articles on airline safety. Served on the faculty at the University of South Carolina, University of California's Aviation Safety and Security Program. He's been inducted into the South Carolina Aviation Hall of Fame. In 2006, President Bush appointed him as vice chairman to the National Transportation Safety Board. Later, President Trump promoted him to the position that he holds today. Throughout his long career, his focus has been making transportation safe for our country. Please welcome the National Chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, Robert L. Sumwalt.
Wow, thank you. It is great to be back in Columbia, South Carolina. Jerry, you said I'm somebody you've always aspired to meet. I would encourage you to raise your standards. Somebody asked my wife, what is the secret to being married for 40 years? And she said, that's pretty simple. Robert's in Washington all the time. I'm blessed to have a wonderful wife, so thank you. And we've got a wonderful daughter as well. Yeah, it really is great to be here. You know, people ask me, what is my favorite place to travel? Like many of you, I travel a lot of places. My favorite place to travel is right here, to come back to this airport in Columbia. It's a wonderful place. I hear people talking about saving $30 by driving to Charlotte. Come on. We've got a great airport right here. Another great airport right here is the Jim Hamilton L.P. Owens Airport. And of course it's named for Jim. Jim, you have done more for aviation in South Carolina than anyone I know, and I don't think there's anybody here that would dispute that. Also,
you need to look at the first of the four-way test.
well, I am telling the truth. But you also get the prize for bringing the most number of guests to the Rotary Club. So it's a great airport, and right inside the terminal building is the South Carolina Aviation Hall of Fame. I went out there yesterday and got into Columbia. Joe Wilson and I were on the flight home yesterday. And then I stopped by Owens or by Hamilton Owens to take a few pictures. And in the Aviation Hall of Fame, of course, Jim is in there. Fig Newton is a name that probably, other than on a snack box, probably no one knows in this room, but Fig was he's from Ridgeland. He was the first African-American to fly in the Air Force demonstration team, the Thunderbirds. I was at a black tie dinner on Friday night in Washington, where Fig received a very high award, an honor, the Wright Brothers Award that's been received by the likes of Neil Armstrong, Jimmy Doolittle, Charles Bolden, and Gene Cernan. So Fig was recognized. He's a great patriot. He was the first. He was one of 8 4-star generals in all of the services when he was promoted to 4-star. So a great patriot, a great man, and a great South Carolinian. Others in the South Carolina Aviation Hall of Fame: Buck Schuler, Maynard Cusworth, and so go by and take a look at it. It's a wonderful commemoration of some of the wonderful aviators that we have grown here in South Carolina. Of course, we just heard about this flight, and no, Jim Hamilton was not there. But what people may not realize is that the Wright brothers also suffered the first passenger fatality on board an airplane. Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge was killed in a flight that was piloted by Orville in 1908. So this was the first passenger fatality on board an aircraft. And over the years, the military continues to investigate their mishaps. But as far as civil aviation, originally civil aviation accidents were investigated by the post office, because in those days, most of the airplanes flying around were mail planes. That later became the accident investigation went to the Department of Commerce. It then went to the Civil Aeronautics Board, and finally, in April of 1967, on the day that the U.S. Department of Transportation was formed, so was the NTSB. We were originally part of the DOT, but in 1974, Congress passed the Independent Safety Board Act of '74 to make the NTSB a completely independent federal agency. And the reason being, of course, is that if we're going to do our jobs properly to investigate accidents, occasionally we're going to need to call out something that another DOT agency did do or did not do that should have been done. And so Congress wanted to make sure there was that complete independence so that we can call it the way that we see it. And I think that independence is something that we have to guard and protect with everything that we do. So really we are, even though our name is the National Transportation Safety Board, we really are an accident investigation agency. We're not the regulator. For aviation, that would be the Federal Aviation Administration. For rail, it would be the Federal Railroad Administration. So we go out and investigate bad things and then make recommendations to prevent those things from happening again. So really our mission is to prevent accidents, reduce injuries, and save lives. The board itself, we're involved in all modes of transportation. We investigate by statute. We have the authority or the responsibility to investigate all civil aviation accidents in this country, but we also investigate selected marine accidents. I showed this ship because it's significant. This ship sailed around October the 1st of 2005, and it sailed into a hurricane, Hurricane Joaquin. Does anybody know the name of that storm? That's like mentioning the name William T. Sherman in this part of the world, because Joaquin, of course, trashed Columbia, South Carolina. Elliot, you went out and saved a lot of people in your boat, so thank you for doing that. So this ship sailed into Hurricane Joaquin, which at the time was a Category 4 hurricane. It sank into 15,000 feet of water, claiming each of the 33 lives of the crew members. The NTSB, with the help of many people, the Navy, and Woods Hole, was able to locate the ship in 15,000 feet of water and actually retrieve the voyage data recorder, and we completed the investigation on that. That was the El Faro.
A couple of months ago, the limousine crash up in upstate New York. We do selected highway accidents. We also deal with selected rail accidents and even pipeline accidents. And why pipeline? People say that's a weird thing, and you're right, not a lot of people are traveling by pipeline these days. But the fact is, pipeline is a mode of transportation. We are moving a product through a pipeline just as we may move a product on a train. Crude oil, for example. It travels through pipelines and it travels on the rails. So it is a mode of transportation for moving products. So we're a pretty busy little agency. We also conduct safety studies. We completed one in September of pedestrian safety. Pedestrian fatalities are up 27% over the past decade, while meanwhile, highway or transportation accidents overall have decreased by 14%. About 16 people on average lose their lives that are pedestrians each day. About 6,000 people a year, pedestrians, lose their lives. What's causing that? What do you think? Why 27% increase over the past decade? Any thoughts on that? You got it. I mean, we don't know that for sure, but that's probably a pretty good assumption. We have a 5-member board. The board members are appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate. We hold a board meeting every other Tuesday to deliberate accidents, to adopt those reports, and to adopt safety studies. So that's what the board does. The real work of the agency is done by our wonderful staff. These are highly trained they're engineers, physicists, chemical engineers, chemists. We have a great staff. Some fast facts, 1900. That's about how many accidents we will have done by January 3rd or by December 31st. 400 employees in the NTSB. Our annual budget, $110.4 million. And as of Friday, the annual budget is 0. Or Saturday morning, I guess. Joe has promised me that he's going to go back to Washington and get us a budget. But in case he doesn't, if you take the U.S. population, it's about 325,000 people, and divide that into 110,000, it's 29.5 cents per person is what the NTSB costs each person in the United States. And in the event that we do shut down, if you don't mind, I'm embarrassed to ask this, but if you don't mind just leaving 30 cents on the way out. Last week, we were ranked among the best places to work in the federal government. In our cohort, which is small agencies of 1,000 employees or less, we're number 6 out of 29. In 2013, we were 14, right squarely in the middle of that. 3 years ago, we were number 9. Last year, we were number 6, and this year, we're number 6. And I set a vision that we would be the best place to work in the federal government, and we are actively working on that goal. So I'm very proud to know that we really are, we are doing things right. It was very gratifying to see that our scores have not only continued to improve, but at least we didn't regress any. So, what do? Well, of course, we investigate accidents. We have a response operations center that's 24/7, 365, and most of the time, what we learn is going to come from media sources. There's some sort of a major accident out there. CNN is probably going to know about that before somebody picks up the phone and officially notifies the NTSB. Whether it's through media or telephone or whatever, this is where our folks initially would get notified. Right down here in the left-hand corner of the bank of TVs is a pickup truck. That pickup truck was in Lockhart, Texas. This was on Saturday around 1 in the afternoon. Earlier that morning, a hot air balloon crashed in Lockhart, Texas, claiming 16 lives. So that was, as you see, there's golf and there's everything else on TV. That was just becoming out on the media there. And of course, we responded. The most deadly transportation, most deadly aviation crash we'd seen since 2009. and that was 2015. 16 people killed in one hot air balloon. That in itself is incredible, but it speaks well for the fact that that was the most deadly accident that we've seen in aviation since 2009. So, I mean, that says a lot right there. We used to have one fatal airline accident. We used to have about 3 of those a year. We will scramble to get to where we need to be, oftentimes on a government jet. November 1, November 2, November 3, whichever it happens to be. We may drive, however, whatever it takes to get there, we will get there. And I will tell you, the last 365 days have been extremely interesting and devastating. We have a good transportation system, but when things go wrong, they go wrong. So a year ago tomorrow, I was at a reception, at a commencement reception for the University of South Carolina. You see sitting next to Patricia Pastides, who's not in the picture. The governor was there, the chairman of the board of trustees was there, my wife Ann is there, Harris Pastides was at that table, and my phone was about to explode. It was vibrating, and finally I just had to address it and said, guys, whatever's going on, you're going to have to deal with it. Because I'm in Columbia and I'm getting ready to speak to a group, and you just deal with it. Of course they did, they don't need me, but what was happening there is an Amtrak train had run off a track in DuPont, Washington, just south of Seattle. And the long and the short of it was the inaugural run of this particular Amtrak route. There's a curve there that's supposed to be taken at 30 miles an hour. The track speed up to that point is 79 miles an hour. And then the locomotive engineer is supposed to slow the train down to 30. What could go wrong there? Well, he didn't. And he goes sailing off the track, and 3 people lost their lives, but considering that the train crashed down onto I-5, we're lucky there weren't more casualties. The sad thing is that this accident, this exact same type of accident, could be prevented by something called positive train control, PTC. PTC was mandated by Congress after a deadly accident in Chatsworth, California in 2008. A month after that accident, the Congress passed the Rail Safety Improvement Act of 2008 to mandate PTC to be installed on railroads by the end of 2015. The railroads didn't meet that deadline, so the Congress says, well, it has to be done by the end of 2018. Well, 2018 ends in about 14 days, and the majority of the nation's railroads will not have positive train control. So Congress has said, well, if you have certain hoops that you've jumped through, you can extend it another 2 years. PTC would have prevented this accident. PTC would have prevented the Amtrak crash up in Philadelphia a few years ago. PTC would have prevented the accident that happened here on February the 4th in Casey. Positive train control needs to get done, and the railroads aren't getting it done. Since the Rail Safety Improvement Act was passed in October of 2008, there have been 22 accidents that could have been prevented by positive train control that have claimed 29 lives and costing over $500 million in property damage. So, Casey, what happened here? There's a CSX freight train that's parked in a siding. There's CSX. It's a freight train with 2 locomotives and 34 cars attached to it. Amtrak is coming down the track. It stopped here in Columbia and picked up passengers. It's en route southbound, ultimately down to Miami. It's going down the track at 56 miles an hour. And the intent is for it to continue on that track. However, there's a track switch here that when the Casey crew backed their train into the siding, the CSX crew did not realign the switch, so the track would send the Amtrak straight down those tracks. Now there's a track switch. When I talk about a track switch, it's a contraption that it can actually move the rails so the train either goes on one set of tracks or another. But as happened in Graniteville, where are you, Bud? It's happened in Graniteville in January of '05. Somebody left the switch in the wrong position, and here's what happens. Amtrak gets diverted, and this is what you end up with. Both the locomotive engineer and the conductor of the Amtrak lost their lives. Positive train control could have prevented that accident. Positive train control could have prevented Graniteville. Here we are, explaining to Governor McMaster the track switch, and since Henry was very helpful to me in getting my position, as was Joe Wilson, you can better believe I'm holding the umbrella for Henry McMaster. Joe, if you were there, I would have held the umbrella. A month later, normally I'll go on about one accident a year. I hit 6 this year. So that was February, now it's March. Bridge collapse, pedestrian bridge collapse in Miami. They constructed this bridge, it's called a rapid bridge. They constructed the bridge in the area just next to the road that has all the dirt on it. They constructed it there, and then on a Sunday morning they rotated, picked it up and rotated it in position and set it down on the pylons. That's the plan. It was Sunday that they moved it, but within a day or two they started noticing cracking in the bridge. They discussed it, but they did not decide to, hey, maybe we better shut off traffic until we can figure this out. And the bridge collapsed onto several cars, claiming 6 lives. We came out with an interim report, very short report, but I'm going to call out the verbiage here. And notice that it says, although the investigation is ongoing, there were errors made in the design. The investigation continues. So far we've hit February, March, now April. Southwest Airlines in Philadelphia. The jet engine has 24 turbine blades, or fan blades I should say, the front of the engine. You can notice that just, maybe you can see just under Pierre's almost elbow, his forearm there, there's something missing. That would be the fan blade that was missing. One of the fan blades separated in flight. It banged against the engine casing, which created a dynamic force, a shock wave that went around the engine. It's bulged the engine out. The cowling separated. The cowling banged against the side of the one of the windows there. Of course, we all know a 43-year-old lady with 2 children went out. It was partially ejected. Now, as horrific as that is, and it's very sad, let me put it in perspective. February of 2009, Colgan Air crashed in Buffalo, killed 50 people, 49 on the airplane, 1 in a house. The U.S. airline industry went 9 years without a single passenger fatality in that period of time. Yes, there was the Asiana crash, killed 3 people. That was a foreign airline. There was a UPS crash in Birmingham that killed both pilots. They were not passengers. Still very good people. But my point is that passengers have had a very good record. 6 billion passengers flown safely on U.S. airlines between those 2 accidents, which is, in itself is incredible. It's true that if you fly on an airliner, they might lose your luggage, they might kill your dog, they might drag you off of an airplane, but they're probably going to get you there safely. So we go to March. Now we've gone February, March, April, May. Saturday morning, Amtrak or some CSX derails up in Alexandria. There's an area of washout that you can see, about a huge washout area. There's been a lot of rain in Washington. This did not get national attention. No one seriously injured. Took out a railroad bridge. Nothing serious. So we go all the way to September, and then there's a September the 15th, I think it was, 13th. We go to Merrimack Valley, just about 30 to 40 miles north of Boston. where there's gas pipeline explosions throughout three towns, Andover, North Andover, and Lawrenceville, or Lawrence, Mass. One person lost his life when a chimney, when a house exploded. This 18-year-old had just received his driver's license. He goes to his friend's house to celebrate. The house explodes, the chimney falls on his car, and he loses his life. And then, of course, 20 people killed in one single vehicle crash outside of Albany, New York. That was in October. So it's been a very, very busy year. Ultimately, the NTSB, what we have a plaque outside our training center that says, from tragedy, we draw knowledge to improve the safety of us all. And that's really what we're in the business of doing. We're in the business to find out what happened so that we can keep it from happening again. We are entering into the holidays, and every year, 10,000 people lose their lives due to alcohol-impaired driving. That's just absurd. 10,000 people, alcohol-impaired driving. That does not include the drug-impaired driving, which is becoming an increasing problem. Just alcohol alone. I think most responsible people all responsible people would not consume excess amounts of alcohol and get behind the wheel of a car. But what I have found is that people that are normally very, very responsible don't think twice about getting in a car, putting it in drive, and picking up a cell phone. I changed my behavior in 2009. I don't do it. We held a forum, a roundtable, about a year and a half ago that I moderated. It featured the victims, the survivor advocates, as we call them, people who've lost loved ones or have been struck by vehicles or in cars. We put together a quick clip. Let me watch this quick clip here. It's about 2 minutes. That's it? Do they have a microphone we can put there by your speaker?
It's not working.
Well. This is what I was concerned about. But you know what? That's okay.
Are you sure?
Well, I mean, we can't get it to play, can we? I wish we could.
Speaker. I don't know where the speaker is on it to make it.
Well, that's all right. It's too bad. Because when you see these people talking about losing people, it really gets your attention. This distraction business is nuts. When you meet people who have lost their loved ones because somebody is talking on the phone or texting, it's nuts. People say, I'm careful, I use Bluetooth, hands-free. There is no difference, statistically speaking, in a crash risk for handheld versus hands-free. There's no difference. And why is that? Because it's the cognitive distraction. You're so engrossed in the conversation that you're not paying attention. So if you want to have a great Christmas, get off the telephone. Thank you, and may God bless America. Well, thank you. Please, just a few minutes.
Can you speak briefly about the driverless cars and what's coming?
Can I speak about driverless cars? You know, that's
people come to me with questions like that all the time. What do we think about drones? And we really are, as I said, an accident investigation agency. So there's a regulator out there that's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that is setting the standards. Congress has got an AV bill that's pending, an automated vehicle bill that's pending. So really our role is, as ridiculous as it may seem, our role is not to be out there setting policy. That's what Congress does, that's what the regulator does. Our role is to investigate accidents. We did investigate an Uber crash. We've had a couple of an Uber crash that happened in March that was being operated by it struck a pedestrian. We were investigating the accident. We're investigating a couple of Tesla accidents that have been operated in the autopilot mode. Had an interesting conversation with Elon Musk where he hung up on me. But so really, we are investigating accidents, and what we learn comes from that. But we're not the policy setters. Elliot?
Is it too soon to know if that was a drone that hit the nose cone of that airliner?
Yeah.
Not here in the United.
Yes, it's too soon to know if that was a drone that actually hit a airliner down in Mexico a few days ago. I don't know for certain, and the Mexican government would take the lead on that. I'll take one more question. Yes, sir.
Do you see the United States getting the high-speed train traffic that Europe has as far as 180 mile an hour network is?
Well, do I see the United States getting the high-speed traffic, high-speed rail traffic? Again, that's a policy decision, and we investigate those accidents. But I think we've all been to Europe, and we've seen how marvelous the rail system is over there. And it'd be nice to have a system like that so people don't have to drive to Charlotte all the time. Thank you very much.
Robert, thank you so much. Thank you for your leadership and for keeping the NTSB an independent federal agency. You mentioned that briefly, and it really speaks to the integrity of the process. We have a small token of our appreciation here for you today. It's got the 4-way test written on it that Jim was referencing, so helps protect the integrity of our process as Rotarians. Thank you again. We're running low on time. I'll tell you, we're not meeting for the next 2 weeks. We'll be back on January 7th, where our speaker is going to be Brian Maynard. Brian is a leadership consultant and style coach. He writes articles for a lot of the emails I get from Cola Daily and Columbia Biz, Midlands Biz. I may be getting it wrong, but it should be a great program, another great program. So thank you, Louisa, for getting that. And I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Let's stand and close in song.